Russia unleashed, Ukraine destroyed. In less than 7 hours, an entire brigade was torn apart and left smoldering on the steppe. At 5:15 a.m., the 8th of September, 2025, Moscow threw its steel fist across the Donetsk frontier. 70 tanks, 320 drones, 30 mine-clearing vehicles, and 200 elite soldiers. It was a billion-dollar storm designed to smash Ukraine's defenses in one decisive strike. The ground thundered under 3,500 tons of armor, while swarms of drones blackened the sky. Villages shook as if the earth itself was collapsing, but the unstoppable force was stopped. Ukraine, under General Syrskyi, had prepared a trap that shattered Russia's pride. What was meant to be a perfect breakthrough dissolved into fireballs, wreckage, and staggering losses. So I ask you, in today's wars, does brute firepower still decide victory, or is strategy the true weapon? Leave your answer in the comments as we dive in. At 5:15 a.m., the 8th of September, 2025, the eastern horizon of Ukraine did not wake to birdsong or the quiet hum of morning life. It woke to the thunder of engines and the shriek of metal. Russia unleashed a strike of such magnitude that even seasoned commanders called it a storm of steel. From the skies rose 320 drones, a swarm blackening the dawn. Each had its orders. 120 targeted Ukraine's air defenses, seeking to blind radars and silence missile batteries. 100 carried incendiaries, designed to ignite fuel depots and fireballs. 100 more were kamikazes, packed with explosives meant to tear apart ammunition bunkers in a single blow. Above the villages of Donetsk and Luhansk, it was as if a second night had fallen, only this night buzzed with death. Then the ground shook. 30 armored mine-clearing vehicles, each weighing nearly 45 tons, rolled forward with their steel rollers smashing earth at 20 blows per second. Behind them, the spearhead emerged. 70 Russian tanks, together forming over 3,500 tons of armored steel. Their cannons, firing shells at 5,400 feet per second, were capable of vaporizing any target they touched. Marching in perfect formation behind this wall of iron came 1,200 elite Russian soldiers, the equivalent of a full brigade. In one sector, within minutes, Moscow had hurled more than $1.2 billion worth of war machines across the frontier. Civilians in nearby villages felt the ground tremble as if the earth itself were collapsing. For Russia, it was the perfect plan. Saturate the sky, crush the soil, and drive a steel wedge through Ukraine's defenses. But beneath the roar and the thunder, unseen eyes were waiting. Ukraine had prepared something else, something Moscow did not expect. Beneath the quiet fields outside Bakhmut, Ukraine had planted a secret. Hidden under layers of churned earth lay 60 high-yield anti-tank mines, each with a blast radius powerful enough to tear a 50-ton tank into molten fragments. But these were not ordinary mines. They were wired together, linked to a single manual trigger. One pull of the cord, and the ground itself could erupt across hundreds of yards, turning fertile farmland into a furnace of steel and fire. The plan was audacious. Let Russia's armored spearhead roll forward, funnel them into a kill zone, then ignite the detonator and erase their advance in one apocalyptic strike. Ukrainian soldiers crouched in silence, their hands trembling on the firing line. At their backs were homes and families. Ahead of them, more than 3,500 tons of Russian armor and 1,200 soldiers bearing down like an iron avalanche. At 5:42 a.m., the lead Russian vehicles entered the trap. The moment had come. Every heartbeat felt like thunder. Fingers tightened around the cord, then fate intervened. One of the 30 Russian mine-clearing vehicles, a steel beast weighing over 45 tons, rumbled straight over the central charges. The crushing weight triggered the explosives prematurely. In an instant, the earth erupted. Fireballs tore skyward. Shockwaves shattered windows miles away. 14 Russian vehicles were obliterated in less than 10 seconds, but so too was Ukraine's carefully prepared ambush. What was meant to annihilate the entire column had detonated too soon. Weeks of planning evaporated in a single misfire. Panic rippled through Ukrainian lines. Had the battle already slipped away? Would Russia's juggernaut now surge through the breach, unstoppable? If you were in command, would you retreat or hold and gamble everything? General Syrskyi chose the latter, and his next move would redefine the fight. The minefield had failed, but General Syrskyi did not blink. "Hold the line," he commanded. "Let them believe we are finished." Then, with a single order, Ukraine unleashed its hidden weapon. From concealed launchers, 200 specialized drones lifted into the pale morning sky. These were no ordinary machines of war. They carried reinforced nets engineered to snare enemy UAVs mid-flight. Above them, the Russian swarm still thundered forward. Of the original 320 drones, more than 180 remained operational, sweeping across Ukrainian positions like a living storm of hornets. Their mission was simple: blind the radars, silence the artillery, and break open the defensive wall. The clash that followed was unlike anything seen in modern warfare. It was a drone-on-drone dogfight, invisible wires and spinning rotors colliding in midair. Within minutes, Ukrainian nets tangled over 70 Russian UAVs, dragging them to earth like steel birds shot from the sky. Ground-based defenses joined in. Rows of 6-barrel Gatling guns roared to life, spewing 6,000 rounds per minute, their tracers cutting fiery arcs across the heavens. The air became a slaughterhouse. Explosions rippled overhead as drones collided, spiraled, and burst into fireballs. Yet Russia fought with desperate determination. 3 of their UAVs broke through the gauntlet, smashing into a forward Ukrainian base. Supply trucks ignited. 5 soldiers were wounded, and black smoke billowed as fuel burned. It was a grim reminder. Even the smallest breach could bleed. But the defenders refused to break. For every drone that slipped through, a dozen were cut from the sky. What began as Russia's confident swarm was unraveling into chaos, and Syrskyi, watching the battle unfold, knew this was only the opening act. Because the next strike would not come from the sky, it would come crashing down on Russia's tanks. General Syrskyi wasted no time. The skies above were still alive with chaos, but he knew hesitation would mean death. His command was simple, merciless: release the blades. From hidden launch pads, 250 kamikaze drones and 100 precision bomb-dropping UAVs surged into the air. They were small, almost fragile, yet each carried enough explosive to tear open a tank or shred infantry formations. Cheap machines, yet priceless in effect. At 5:58 a.m., the swarm dove. The first wave slammed into the Russian spearhead like a storm of steel daggers. In seconds, 27 Russian tanks were ripped apart, their turrets hurled skyward like tin lids blown from pressure cookers. Columns of fire rose hundreds of feet into the dawn, painting the horizon in orange fury. Infantry formations buckled, hundreds of soldiers scattered, their once disciplined lines collapsing into panic. Survivors clung to burning armor, others fired wildly into the sky, wasting precious ammunition on shadows they could not hit. The battlefield became a nightmare. Explosions echoed like rolling thunder, dirt and shrapnel tearing through men and machines alike. For every Russian tank destroyed, shock rippled deeper into their ranks. Billions of rubles in armor were reduced to burning wrecks by drones, costing less than $10,000 each. Russia's advance, once unstoppable, was now staggering. But Syrskyi was not finished. The drones had broken the spearhead. Now it was time for Ukraine's own armor to strike from the forests. The sky was still burning with the wreckage of drones when the ground itself began to roar. From the shadows of 2 dense forests, Ukraine revealed its most lethal answer. Dozens of T-64 and T-72 tanks, modernized with NATO optics and munitions, rolled out in tight formation. Their guns pointed forward like a row of iron spears, engines growling as if the earth itself had chosen sides. At 6:03 a.m., the forest erupted. Ukrainian armor opened fire almost in unison, their cannons spitting high-velocity shells at 5,000 feet per second. The first barrage tore through Russia's spearhead. In just 7 minutes, 19 Russian tanks were annihilated, their ammunition cooking off in catastrophic fireballs. Turrets weighing 15 tons were launched into the air, landing hundreds of feet away. The battlefield became a graveyard of burning giants, each column of black smoke marking another fallen beast of steel. Russian crews scrambled to react. Tank commanders barked orders, swiveling their cannons toward the forests. In desperation, they fired blindly into the tree line. Over 500 shells and artillery rounds were unleashed in less than 15 minutes, shaking the earth with deafening thunder. But the forest was no easy target. Ukrainian armor shifted positions after every volley, striking back with surgical precision. Infantry caught between the dueling monsters paid the heaviest price. Hundreds of Russian soldiers dove into ditches, barns, and roadside craters, trying to escape the crossfire. Those who tried to regroup with portable anti-tank missiles managed to knock out 2 Ukrainian vehicles, but their triumph was short-lived. Machine gun squads and armored personnel carriers advancing behind the tanks shredded them before they could reload. By 6:20 a.m., the picture was undeniable. Nearly 40% of Russia's frontline armor lay in ruins, and over 400 soldiers were dead or incapacitated. What Moscow had envisioned as a swift breakthrough was collapsing into chaos. But General Syrskyi knew this was only phase 2. The spearhead was broken. Now it was time to hunt the scattered survivors. The battlefield was broken, but the fight was not finished. Russia's armored wedge had shattered, leaving behind chaos-burning wrecks, scattered infantry, and pockets of survivors clinging to survival. General Syrskyi refused to let them regroup. His next command was cold, relentless. Hunt them down. High above, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones fanned out like hawks. Their cameras captured every detail. Tree lines hiding stragglers, barns packed with soldiers, trenches filled with the wounded. Each drone carried a charge, ready to strike. What followed was a campaign of precision slaughter. In one recorded feed, a Russian conscript dropped his rifle and raised both hands, begging directly into the drone's camera. Others weren't given the chance. Kamikaze UAVs dove into farmhouses, detonating with surgical accuracy, erasing squads in seconds. Within 20 minutes, at least 150 soldiers were eliminated by drones alone. But Ukraine didn't stop there. From the edges of the battlefield, squads of infantry on fast all-terrain motorcycles sped into the kill zones. Armed with rifles and grenade launchers, they swarmed isolated Russian groups, forcing dozens to surrender. By noon, more than 300 Russian soldiers were captured alive, their weapons scattered in the dirt like discarded bones. The image was staggering. What began as a 1,200-man spearhead was now reduced to fragments shaking, disarmed, or dead. Over 800 casualties in less than 7 hours. The battlefield of Donetsk had become a hunting ground. Every Russian move tracked, every hiding place exposed. And yet, Syrskyi was not finished. His plan demanded one last blow to strike that would erase Moscow's assault completely. By mid-morning, the battlefield had fallen silent. Smoke rose in black columns across the steppe, each one marking the grave of a Russian tank, a shattered vehicle, or a platoon reduced to ashes. What Moscow had hailed as a decisive strike had unraveled into humiliation. The numbers told the story. Out of 70 tanks, fewer than 20 remained functional, many crippled and abandoned. Of the 1,200 elite soldiers who crossed the border, more than 800 lay dead or wounded, while another 300 had been captured alive. The armored spearhead, worth more than $1.2 billion in war machines, had been annihilated in less than 7 hours. The cost for Ukraine was painful, but incomparable. Fewer than 20 soldiers killed, 5 critically wounded in drone strikes. The defenders had survived, adapted, and turned disaster into annihilation. The contrast was staggering. A nation outnumbered, yet not outmatched. Across Donetsk, civilians emerged from basements and ruined farmhouses to witness the wreckage. The steppe was littered with burning hulls and twisted steel, a vast graveyard of Russia's ambition. Survivors described the site as apocalyptic, an entire brigade reduced to smoldering fragments of iron and flesh. For Russia, the 8th of September would be remembered as a day of failure, a nightmare carved into steel and smoke. For Ukraine, It was proof that resilience, creativity, and leadership could shatter brute force. The war had not ended, but the message was undeniable. No amount of armor, no swarm of drones, no billions in weapons could crush the will of a nation determined to survive. And as General Syrskyi surveyed the ruins, one truth echoed louder than the silence. Ukraine had not only held the line, it had broken Russia's dream of victory in a single morning. By noon on the 8th of September, 2025, the battlefield of Donetsk was no longer a front line. It was a graveyard. What began as Russia's grand offensive, fueled by billions in steel and firepower, had ended in smoke, twisted metal, and silence. An entire brigade, once confident of crushing Ukraine in hours, was erased before the day was half over. Ukraine's losses were real, but light compared to the devastation inflicted on Moscow. The numbers alone were staggering. Over 800 Russian casualties, 300 captured, and billions in war machines reduced to wrecks. More than a battle, this was a lesson proof that courage, strategy, and innovation can overturn overwhelming odds. But here's the question that lingers. In modern warfare, is raw firepower still the key to victory, or is adaptability the real weapon of survival? Tell me what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of this war.